Look, I know how this sounds. Believe me, I really do. You're already picturing me, aren't you? The villain, the homewrecker, the woman who had it all and threw it away for what, exactly? A moment of madness? A thrill? A delusion? Maybe all of the above, okay? I'm not asking for your pity, just a moment of your time. A chance to explain before you pass your judgment, which I'm sure is already written all over your face. My name is Sarah. I'm 35 years old, and my life is a dumpster fire. A self-immolated, toxic waste dump of my own making, apparently. And it all started because I felt like I was drowning in something everyone else called perfection. See, for 12 years, I was with Mark. 12 years. We started dating in high school, practically grew up together. He was the golden boy, the steady one, the one everyone adored. And by extension, I was adored too, as his girlfriend, his fiancée, his wife. He was, objectively speaking, perfect, kind, attentive, stable to a fault. He remembered every anniversary, every minor preference, every bleeping thing I ever mumbled in passing. He cooked. He cleaned. He held my hand. He was the kind of man your mother would weep with joy over. The kind of man who would hold a steady job, pay the bills on time, and never, ever make you question his devotion. He was the kind of man that friends would eye enviously, whispering, "You got a good one, Sarah. Don't ever let him go." And my son, Leo, from a previous short-lived relationship that fizzled out before Mark and I even got serious, Mark stepped up. He was more of a father to Leo than Leo's biological father ever was. He was there for every school play, every scraped knee, every late-night story. He was everything a woman could ever ask for. And that, right there, was the problem. He was so good, so unwavering, that it felt like a heavy blanket smothering me. His attentiveness, which should have been a comfort, became a cage. Every loving glance, every thoughtful gesture, felt like another brick in the wall of my perfectly curated, utterly suffocating life. Stability? It was predictability, a script I knew by heart. Passion? It had long ago been replaced by a quiet, comfortable hum that sounded suspiciously like a vacuum cleaner. His sweetness, his absolute lack of anything edgy or unpredictable, made me feel bored. Profoundly, soul-crushingly bored. I used to joke with my friend, Chloe, that our life together was like living in a Hallmark movie, but without the satisfying emotional arc. Just endless, syrupy sweetness. He was so loving, so nice, that I started to resent him for it. It made me feel like a bad person for wanting more, for craving something beyond this beige, pleasant existence. Can you understand that? The guilt of having everything, and still wanting to scream. Our life was a perfectly choreographed dance of routine. Tuesdays were for sushi. Fridays were for a quiet night in with a movie. Sundays were for meal prepping for the entire week, a ritual I particularly despised, the smell of roasted chicken and chopped vegetables forever ingrained in my mind as the scent of my own slow, domestic death. He'd plan our holidays months in advance, picking out sensible, family-friendly resorts. We never did anything spontaneous, anything daring. I tried sometimes to inject a little chaos. I'd suggest a last-minute road trip or a crazy idea for a new hobby. He'd smile, pat my hand, and gently steer me back to the path of logical, pre-planned contentment. He wanted me to be happy, yes, but only within the confines of his idea of happiness. And I, like a bleeping idiot, went along with it for far too long. I was a trophy wife, a carefully arranged flower in his perfectly manicured garden. And somewhere deep inside, the roots were rotting. That's when Jax came along. It was at some industry networking event, one of those painfully corporate mixers I usually dreaded. Mark couldn't make it, of course, because he had an early meeting the next day and needed his 8 hours of restorative sleep. Jax was the opposite of everything Mark was. He had a wild, unkempt kind of charm. He was all sharp edges and knowing smiles, with a laugh that echoed a little too loudly and eyes that saw right through the polite veneer I usually wore. We talked for hours, leaning against a display table, ignoring everyone else. He was a photographer, a freelance artist, always on the road, always seeking the next experience. He made fun of my boring industry, and I laughed because it was true. He didn't ask about my son or my husband. He just looked at me. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Truly seen. Not as Mark's wife, not as Leo's mom, but as Sarah. Just Sarah. The first transgression was subtle. Harmless, even. A late-night text from Jax. Just a funny meme he remembered from our conversation. I laughed, then deleted it. Just a quick flash of thrill, a spark of something forbidden. Then came the accidental coffee. A quick meeting to network and discuss ideas, but the conversation always veered away from work, always circled back to us, to our shared cynicism, our similar restlessness. He made me feel alive, like a dormant part of me had just jolted awake. It was intoxicating. And so the pattern of deception began. It was a slippery slope, you know? First, it's deleting texts. Then it's inventing meetings. Then it's turning off location sharing on my phone. The lies came so easily, so smoothly. I'd look Mark in the eye, smile, and fabricate an entire evening's events without a flicker of remorse. It wasn't because I was a bad person, not entirely. It was because the high of getting away with it, the power I felt in holding the secret, was more potent than any drug. It was like I was finally in control of my own life, creating my own narrative, one thrilling lie at a time. I rationalized it, of course, constantly. This wasn't about cheating, not really. This was about self-discovery. This was about finding the real me, the one buried under years of domesticity and predictable routines. Jax understood me in a way Mark never could. He appreciated my darker humor, my restlessness, my desire for something more raw and authentic. Mark, bless his innocent heart, just wanted me to be happy within the confines of our perfect little bubble. He didn't understand that the bubble was suffocating me. Jax did. Jax saw the wildness in me, the part that yearned to break free. This wasn't a betrayal of Mark. It was a reclaiming of myself. That's what I told myself every single night, as I snuck around, as I deleted messages, as I lied about where I'd been and who I'd seen. Mark, meanwhile, was completely oblivious. Or so I thought. He was so trusting, so supportive. He'd smile, tell me he was proud of me for networking, for chasing my dreams. His unwavering faith in me, his absolute trust, became a green light in my twisted mind. He was so good, so naive, that it almost felt like he deserved to be deceived. Like he made it too easy. What was wrong with him? That he couldn't see it. What was wrong with me that I took advantage of it? The major betrayal, the point of no return, was when it became physical. It started subtly, a lingering touch, an accidental brush of hands. Then came the shared hotel rooms during work trips that were anything but. The whispered secrets in the dark, the feeling of absolute freedom. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and completely addicting. I'd come home, kiss Mark, hug Leo, and feel a perverse sense of power. Like I was living a double life, two completely separate realities, and only I held the keys. I convinced myself that this new, passionate connection with Jax was the real thing. This was what love should feel like. Not comfortable, not quiet, but raw, consuming, all-encompassing. Mark, our entire history, suddenly felt like a lie. A comfortable, convenient lie I had told myself for years. This was my chance, my one chance, to grab true happiness, true passion. I deserved this, didn't I? After all those years of sacrificing my own desires for a picture-perfect life, wasn't it my turn? I was so swept up in the fantasy, so convinced that Jax and I were destined for this grand, dramatic love story. He made me feel like the main character in my own movie, finally. I started dropping hints to him about our future, about moving in together, about finally being truly free. I talked about Leo, about how much he'd love Jax, how easily he'd fit into our new, exciting, unconventional life. That's when it happened. The moment the fantasy shattered. I was sitting with him in a dimly lit bar after one of our stolen weekends. I remember I took a deep breath and I said, Leo is getting really excited about you. He keeps asking when he'll get to spend more time with you, when you'll come to our place, and Jax just froze. His charming smile faltered, replaced by this deer-in-headlights look. He cleared his throat. Sarah, he said, his voice suddenly flat, devoid of all that earlier passion. Babe, we talked about this. This is just fun, right? We're just hooking up. No strings. No complications. He even made a little gesture with his hands, like he was untying something. I told you I didn't want anything serious. And definitely not something with a kid involved. My world imploded. Just like that. The air went out of the room. The grand love story, the thrilling escape, the future I'd painstakingly built in my head, it all dissolved into a pathetic puddle right there on the sticky bar floor. He was looking at me like I was insane, like I'd completely lost my mind. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He had never, not once, seen me as anything more than a temporary distraction, a convenient hookup. And I had thrown away 12 years, a loving partner, a stable home for my son, for this. My heart was pounding, a desperate rhythm against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to beg him to see me, to understand what I'd given up for him. But he just shook his head, looking almost pitying. Look, Sarah, he continued, I like you, but this isn't my scene. I'm not a family guy. You've got your life, I've got mine. This was just what it was. Don't make it complicated. He pushed some cash across the table, stood up, and left. Just like that. He left me sitting there, in the sudden, echoing silence, alone. And that's when my phone vibrated in my purse. It was a text from Mark. We need to talk. My blood ran cold. He didn't scream. He didn't rage. He didn't even cry, not then anyway. Mark, my gentle, predictable Mark, was a block of ice. I walked into the living room, heart hammering, ready with some pathetic lie about a work emergency. But the expression on his face stopped me dead. He was sitting on the sofa, clutching his phone. On the screen, a picture of me, with Jax. Not just a casual picture, but one from a hotel lobby, hands almost touching, a look on my face I barely recognized, pure, unadulterated happiness, reckless and unbound. I stared at it, my stomach churning. Where did you get that? I whispered, my voice barely audible. He looked up, his eyes empty. Doesn't matter, he said, his voice flat. It's a collection, really. This one was from the Blue Heron Resort. Week before last. You told me you were at a conference, remember? He stood up then and walked to the coffee table. On it, laid out with chilling precision, was the evidence. Not just that one photo. There were others. Text logs, screenshots of conversations I thought I'd deleted forever. A printout of my banking statement, showing a hotel charge from a city I wasn't in. He'd found an old, broken phone of mine. And somehow, some bleeping genius of a tech-savvy friend of his had recovered everything. I didn't want to believe it, Sarah, he said, his voice barely a whisper, but it cut me to the bone. I really didn't. But you kept changing. You were always so distant, so busy. I started looking. Just little things at first. And then I saw the truth. All of it, the cold, swift finality in his voice was terrifying. There was no negotiation, no emotional begging. He wasn't asking for an explanation. He wasn't pleading for me to stop. He was just stating facts. He knew. He had known for a while. And he had been systematically gathering proof, building his case, while I was off playing house with Jax. The shame, the humiliation, was a physical weight, pressing down on me. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. His decisive action was immediate and brutal in its efficiency. There was no discussion. No, we need to work on this. No, what about Leo? He simply stated, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. You need to leave. I remember scrambling for words, trying to explain, to apologize, to somehow undo everything. But he just cut me off, cold and precise. There's nothing to say, Sarah. It's over. Within a week, he had packed his things. Not just a suitcase, but everything. His clothes, his books, his half of the kitchen gadgets. He arranged for a moving truck, for temporary custody of Leo, all through his lawyer, mind you, because he wouldn't speak to me directly. My son, Leo, was confused, scared. Mark explained it to him simply, without any venom, just saying that Mommy and Daddy were going to live in different houses for a while. Leo looked at me with those wide, innocent eyes, and I wanted to die. Mark blocked me on his phone, on social media, everywhere. The clean break was absolute. A decade of my life gone.
Erased. Poof. Just like that.
My perfect life, my stable home, gone. And Jax? Well, he was already gone. I tried calling him, of course. Desperate, humiliated. He answered once. Look, he said. I told you no drama. This is exactly why I don't do relationships. You made it complicated. This is on you. Then he hung up. And I never heard from him again. The social isolation that followed was swift and brutal. My friends, our friends, chose Mark. Of course they did. He was the saint, the good guy, the victim. I was the bleeped-up cheater. I'd call Chloe, and she'd either not answer, or her voice would be tight cold. Sarah, I can't. Not right now. Mark's family, who had treated me like their own daughter for years, became a solid, impenetrable wall of hatred. His mother, who used to bake me my favorite cookies, now crossed the street to avoid me. My own family, my parents and sister, were ashamed. My mother cried. My father just stared at me with this look of profound disappointment. What have you done, Sarah? What have you done? Leo, too, was a constant reminder. He was confused, angry sometimes, sad mostly. He clung to Mark, to the stability I had so carelessly shattered. I tried to reach out to Mark in the beginning. Desperate, pathetic attempts at reconciliation. Texts that went unanswered. Emails that bounced back. I even drove by his new apartment once, just to see if I could catch him, try to explain, beg for forgiveness. But I never saw him. The wall was firm, unyielding. He wanted nothing to do with me. And then the news started filtering back, through the grapevine, through mutual acquaintances who apparently hadn't fully blocked me yet. Mark was flourishing. He'd gotten a promotion, a big one, at work. He was out more, going to concerts, trying new restaurants. He looked a lighter, happier. The guilt of that, the bitter envy, gnawed at me. He was thriving, while I was barely treading water. Then came the truth bomb encounter. It was at Leo's parent-teacher conference, of all places. Mark couldn't make it, so his mother, Janice, came instead. My former mother-in-law. She saw me across the crowded hallway, and her face, usually so warm, hardened into a mask of pure contempt. I tried to offer a polite greeting, a small, tentative smile. She didn't return it. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice low and steady, but laced with a venom I'd never heard from her before. You know, Sarah, she said, her eyes boring into mine. Mark was devastated. Truly broken. We all were. You took a good man, a decent man, and you shredded his heart. And for what? Some pathetic, fleeting thrill with a boy who didn't even care enough to stick around. My breath hitched. You had a beautiful life, a wonderful son, a man who loved you more than anything. And you threw it all away. Don't you dare try to act like a victim. You did this. You. And don't you ever think you can come back from that with him. He's found his peace. He's found someone who actually deserves him. You never did. She turned, her back ramrod straight, and walked away, leaving me standing there, numb and exposed, like she had flayed me alive right there in the school hallway. The final blow, the one that truly sealed my fate in this lonely existence, came a few months later. A casual mention by my sister, who meant no harm, just passing on gossip. Oh, by the way, guess who Mark's engaged to? My heart stopped. Engaged? He'd moved on that fast? It was a woman from his new job, apparently. Someone smart, kind, stable. Someone who probably appreciated his reliable nature, his quiet strength. Someone who wouldn't find his love suffocating. I saw a picture later. She was beautiful, smiling, and she looked at him with an adoration that was pure and uncomplicated. And Mark? He looked genuinely happy. Not the polite, contained happiness I'd always seen, but a radiant, unburdened joy. He had found his life, his love, his happiness. Without me, he was building a new family, a new future, the one I'd so carelessly discarded. And sometimes I hear Leo call her mom, not to her face, not yet. But I've heard him whisper it to his friends on the phone. And it's a dagger to my heart every single time.
And here I am.
Alone. Living in a small, impersonal apartment. My job is fine, I suppose. It pays the bills. Leo spends most of his time with Mark, which is probably for the best. Mark is a good father. A much better parent than I am, honestly. Do I regret it? That's the question, isn't it? The one everyone wants answered. Part of me, a small, shriveled part, screams yes. I threw away everything. I hurt the best man I'd ever known, and I damaged my child. All for fleeting, shallow connection with a bleeping narcissist. But then another part of me, the stubborn, self-justifying part, whispers. No, I don't regret wanting more. I still believe I deserved more than a predictable, comfortable existence. Mark couldn't handle me, couldn't understand the depth of my restlessness, the wildness in my soul. He was too placid, too safe. Jax was selfish. Yes, a complete jerk who used me, but at least he made me feel something. He validated that craving for intensity, for passion. It was a rut. That's what it was. And I broke free. Yes, I broke free, and I crashed and burned in the process. Spectacularly. Maybe I learned what I don't want. Maybe that has to count for something, right? Maybe this loneliness, this biting, bitter loneliness, is the price of living an authentic life. Or maybe I'm just a selfish, self-destructive fool who can't admit she screwed up. The silence in my apartment is deafening these days. The nights are long. And sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I see Mark's face, not the cold, angry one, but the one from years ago, full of uncomplicated love. And I feel a pang, a deep, aching regret that twists my gut. But then I tell myself, he was boring. He was too good. He would have suffocated me eventually. And then I turn over, close my eyes, and try to convince myself I made the right choice. Even though I'm still here, all alone, while he's out there, building a new, perfect life with someone else.